Corrections Department says Hutchinson Correctional Facility is in poor condition.
Corrections says the prison needs to be rebuilt, but Governor Kelly did not include money for a new prison in her proposed budget. Keith Rand in the newsroom. And Keith, could money for this new prison still be added to the budget?
Well, Mike and Rachel, there's a chance. For years, though, the Corrections Department has asked lawmakers for money to rebuild the Hutchinson prison, but it's never happened. In 2024, the governor proposed funding to rebuild the prison, but lawmakers rejected it then. The state estimates the cost at about $500 million. That was 2 years ago, though, a number that's likely grown. While the governor has called the project a priority, her current budget, of course, doesn't include funding. Corrections officials say some cells are about the size of a king-size bed, and the prison has no air conditioning. Lawmakers say conditions need to improve for inmates and staff.
You know, it's not only the inmates that have to live in these conditions, but the staff who work, 7, 8, 9 hours a day, they have to be in that same facility without air conditioning in the summer, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, there will be a committee hearing next Friday, January 30th, to go over the possibility of rebuilding or remodeling the Hutchinson prison. Mike?
Thanks, Keith. President Trump touting